Hello, my name is Ryan Dow, and welcome to My Fellow Cartoonists, an interview series where I offer an opportunity for cartoonists to pry themselves away from their drawing boards and socialize like human beings. Today's episode features Dan Murphy. Okay, hi. Hey, Dan. How's it going?
Pretty good, Ryan.
All right. I'm with Dan Murphy at the World Monster headquarters, formerly Big Time Attic Studios. And this is the second episode I'm doing of My Fellow Cartoonists podcast where basically I'm just interviewing cartoonist friends, kind of starting off with the Big Time Attic group. How are you doing? How are you doing?
I do good. Just got off of work.
And, me too.
Pretty chill.
So what have you been working on lately in terms of comics and things like that?
The main series I'm working on now is a series called El Circa, about a very it was strange, bizarre circus.
I've read some issues of that. Yeah. I pick up ones every once in a while when they come out. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been working on it for maybe 4 years, maybe. And
wow. Has it been that long?
So, yeah, I know I have sketches going back.
Oh, okay.
So just like slowly just working on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically, I tell it as if it's like a autobiographical story about me running away to join the circus as a kid.
Oh, wow.
And it's very... it's a circus with a different. It's not like maybe a real circus. It is, but it has a different function.
Well, it has a heightened kind of mystical. Yeah.
There's more going on.
There's people that are like in shapes that people probably can't actually be.
Yeah. And so I go there and I end up like working in a caricature booth there.
Mm-hmm.
But that booth, when I draw people, it has a function where that drawing of that person is used as like kind of a ticket to this big tent that they go to. And they kind of, once they see the drawing of themselves, they realize why they have to go into that tent. And it's, and in the books, it's, that tent represents the entrance to hell or some kind of hell type, I don't
know if I picked up on that, but yeah. But it's tough because I read them when they every few months when they come out.
In like 20 or so. But and so it's like the function of the circus in the story.
Yeah.
And but there's like normal circus stuff going on, and other like normal people come and visit it, but only 1 or 2 visitors at a time are ones that are meant for that end to them. And
and it's like with the sketches, I mean most of the issues I've gotten are, they've kind of got a cardstock cover, but they've got like an individual, a separately printed like little photo of one of the main characters in it, actually glued onto the book itself.
And I like doing it because I like doing that as I like really getting into the packaging.
Yeah. I respect that because I'm pretty bad about packaging, honestly. I have a tendency to just kind of slap it together and, it's impressive to me.
It helps me. I start working on stuff, even the designs of those. Yeah. Before I even work on the actual pages, because it helps me kind of solidify the book as an object to kind of work towards, and as kind of a thing that I can hold instead of just being some ethereal, theoretical book. It helps me see it as an object, and I can
That's good.
Visualize.
Because some of them are longer than others, right? So that maybe affects. I don't know.
I like playing around with the formats. I've done smaller ones and I've done bigger ones. Mm-hmm. And I like having those freedoms so I'm not limited to some size. And which is tricky when I had to... the first couple issues and some of that are handmade mini comics, I had printed up from an actual on-demand publisher.
Oh,
and so I did some reformatting to make them all... one size, and so that was tricky, but it's just another challenge but it keeps me interested when I can have different formats and different things to play with, just to keep it fresh.
And you're also in a band,
kind of
maybe.
Was,
okay,
a band called the Double Dollars, which was an Irish folk country bluegrass blues band that a bunch of people I work with at the bookstore were in, and several of the members have since moved away.
Oh, okay.
And other jobs or had kids, and so really have been playing the past year or so. So
it's tricky with bands. They always
life happens. And, but it was really fun. We put out a CD. We kind of got one pressed up and did some gigs, and And that was a fun. 'Cause I like playing music. I play guitar, a little bit of mandolin, mostly guitar, and so yeah, it's just another creative outlet, which is nice when drawing and painting get tedious. And
well, yeah, I mean,
something else
it seems like more of a social art form.
Yeah, yeah, it gets to be around people, and you just do one thing, and other people can do the
and it's it's like a live performance, and yeah. Okay, so what do you do like for a day job? Like, what do you?
I work at a Half Price Books.
Okay, so yeah. Which one?
The one up in Blaine.
I guess
Twin Rapids, actually.
Well, yeah. Don't be creepy. Don't be stalking him out there. But the one up in Blaine, because I used to go to the one in St. Louis Park, but I haven't been there in a while. It's a pretty
it's a fun job.
No, it's a good store. Yeah. I mean,
I like the people. It's generally tends to attract people who work there. Generally, other creative people. I mean,
it kind of seems like
actors.
Seems like Half Price Books or like the Walker Art Center or
exactly. And so it's not like a very generic retail environment.
No, definitely not.
Which helps. And it has good benefits, really good insurance, 401k bonuses.
Wow.
So it helps.
Yeah.
And which is why I've been there so long. And I've gotten illustration gigs that are working there. A manager I had at one point, she knew a guy that worked at the Rake magazine, sold Freed Monthly magazine, and she wanted my portfolio, and I got a bunch of illustration gigs.
Nice!
So just kind of
Well, illustration's tricky.
Yeah.
That's something I've kind of dabbled in it, if you can call it illustration. I mean, I've had people pay me money to draw things, but I couldn't stick with it. It can be
kind of stressful because it's like you do have to like push yourself. A lot of stuff, a lot of the gigs I've gotten have been kind of just like people I knew.
Yeah.
So I haven't done a ton of.
It's the same with me.
Myself.
I did some it was just like there was a guy, Bill Prendergast, who like did some Michelle Bachman comics.
Yeah, I've done work
with that. I did a few of those, and that was kind of about the extent of it. Yeah. But I don't know. And I in some ways, I'm kind of, I said this in the last podcast, in some ways, I'm kind of glad that like people don't come up to me all the time and ask me to draw stuff.
Well, it was tricky with me because I tend to have like so many different styles that it's hard to just, because it's best when you have one style that an art director or somebody knows that, okay, I want this. He's the guy for it. Where you have a very like defined style.
Well, and I mean, it's not even really intentional. It's just,
but that's kind of how styles are. It's you kind of whittle it down. You kind of find. And it just turns out how it turns out, and that's you don't almost have to do it consciously.
Although I do think you do have a style. I mean, the El Circuit comics have a definite style. I hope I just pronounced that right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. All right. Because they definitely have like a brush and kind of ink wash style. Like, yeah.
And I didn't play around with that. I mean, the first issue was a lot. It was smaller format, so I had to draw it a lot simpler.
Okay.
But then I've done more, as I've gotten, issues have gotten bigger and bigger format. They've gotten a bit more realistic. I can do a lot more like gray wash shading and stuff. And so I like, going back and forth depending on what I have a need for. So, but if I was doing more illustration stuff, I would need to, make sure I hone down a specific style, much like Kevin Cannon. What Kevin Cannon.
Yeah, even though like. Kevin's got kind of a wide style too. I mean, he does a lot of the same. He's kind of honed a style overall, but like, I mean, you can kind of recognize his work as his, but like if you look at all of it together, like it's
there's a variety, but But maybe it's just my insecurity where I think, people won't, because I've had it in the past where an art director asked me, I want a sketch of this. And they'll look at a portfolio of stuff that had a wide range of styles.
Yeah.
I showed them some sketches and like, oh no, we want to kind of like draw like this. So that kind of confusion is like, it's not really good to have that. So if they kind of, everyone's on the same page as far as what what I was giving them was ideal for that kind of interaction with them.
That makes sense. Excuse me. I didn't sleep very much, so I may have stifled a yawn there or not. It's nothing. I'm just trying to get through this. I don't know. What else is there to talk about? I mean, some of the things I've asked before are, one of the things I ask about is why comics, particularly why try to make comics. And so
yeah, that's a good question. There are a lot of work, so it's well, when I first got into drawing, that was my first interest. Is like in elementary school, I was reading a lot of Peanuts and Far Side and Calvin and Hobbes. That was like kind of the golden age of those, and that's how I kind of started to learn to draw. I was like tracing peanuts, which is still the main way to draw as close to trace, because you can't just like draw stuff.
I actually I actually bought the Peanuts DVD, like the Blu-ray, and they actually have like these video segments of how to draw Snoopy and Charlie Brown and stuff like that.
It's so like,
I used to draw a dog, and I basically I would just draw it wrong, and that was part of it. I think that's part of how my style came about, was like, me trying to draw Garfield and drawing it wrong or whatever.
That's how you do it. And I started getting into kind of drawing that way, and then once I got into junior high, I started buying like comics and selling comic books. Yeah, and I saw like the school's like newspaper at junior high, like, and it was just basically just stapled together a bunch of paper. Yeah, but I was like, oh, there's drawings in there, I can do that, and that's I went to like the meetings to do that, and that's where I met Daniel Klanowski, local comic artist, and so we kind of like became friends and started drawing comics together, all through high school. And that's kind of how I got into drawing comics. And I would read like superhero stuff back then. Yeah, I did too. Yeah. I don't know. It's funny because I kind of had a similar arc where it's like I read a lot of funny pages, Sunday funny, kind of comics. And right around middle school, I don't know if it was just the 90s or what, but hit the superhero comics. Exactly. And I mean, I've actually gone back and read some of the 90s stuff, and I want to say it's not good, but like there's a part of me that I think is completely blinded by nostalgia. I mean, and looking back, I wasn't even like reading most of it. I would mostly like look for artists I really like and just like stare at their art. So, like Ellen Davis or Art Adams or. I was kind of like that with any of the X-Men comics I had, because like some of those Chris Claremont X-Men comics in the 90s, like they had really like captivating art, but like I could not make it through any of the text. I remember the stories, Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns and that stuff, but anything else is just, it just kind of for me, probably the big entry point was Peter David, because I'd gotten, I basically subscribed to Spider-Man, but I accidentally got the Hulk by default. Like I don't know why they just gave me the Hulk when in this mail order subscription thing, but it kind of blew my mind at the time because it was using words like I didn't know, and like I had to look them up and things like that. Like it was written way above my reading comprehension level at the time. I look back at it now and it doesn't seem so much, but like at the time it was pretty big. So, and I mean, I don't know. Did you grow up in like rural, or did you grow up around here? Suburbs, just up in Coon Rapids.
Cause I mean, I don't know. For me, it was just kind of like, it was kind of this whole other world that nobody else seemed to know about. And I suppose it's harder to maintain that illusion when you're in the area. Although it always seemed like there's, I think we both come from a time when comics were still fairly obscure, and they still are to a certain extent, but, and I think maybe like later on in high school, I started discovering people like Robert Crumb and Dan Clowes, and a lot of more like alternative indie and underground cartoonists. Like, there's this whole other realm of artists that seemed a lot more, I don't know, that style and that body of work seemed much more attainable than drawing all these superhero stuff, which is really hard and a lot of work and stuff that I don't really want to do if I wasn't that into that genre. It is funny because I don't think I ever thought that I was going to draw like a superhero comic either. Like, I mean, just like, I don't know. I mean, I never thought I was going to be good enough for any of that.
Yeah. I mean, for a little while I did. I'm like, that's all I knew. But then I discovered all the indie stuff. I'm like, you now have to draw all these
You don't have to learn anatomy. No. You probably should learn anatomy, folks. Yeah, I don't know.
Do you have like a group of friends to read comics with, or is it kind of like
you know, when I was in high school, or when I was in like junior high and high school, I really didn't.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I think also, like the people who were, anybody else who was aware of comics, it was more of like a racket at the time. Because it was more about like getting the number ones so that you can.
Yeah. Even like me and Dano back then. Would like, buy stuff and then just.
I mean, I'd bag and board stuff just because I think everybody did back then.
And but then we were aware of it as well. All these foil covered comics and stuff.
Well, I think there was a part of me that caught on pretty quickly. Or at least I want to say that I did, because I don't know, maybe looking back on it, I wasn't really that smart, but I mean, I definitely think that it sort of prepared me for the housing crash that came later. It's like, housing's just always going to be good and always going to be going up. And
just from working at the Half Race Books, I see plenty of copies of X-Force #1 in the clearance section. So that shows you where that went. I don't know. Do you get a lot of people coming in there trying to sell their X-Force ones? Yeah. We'll see like just boxes just full of all 90s. And this is all. And more often than not, they're pretty like aware that it's not worth anything. And,
well, it's tough too, because like sometimes I've even looked for old 90s comics and they're actually kind of hard to find. Some of the ones I'm looking for are actually kind of hard to find, just because, and the only reason I would look for them is like, I used to buy this series from my, like my grocery store had like one comic book, one Spider-Man comic book. And like, maybe I want to buy some that were available before then. But like, those ones are really hard to find. Whereas it's like the Youngblood #1s or whatever are just kind of all over the place.
Well, I've even like, since like working at the bookstore, I mean, we get a lot of stuff come in and a lot of like nice reprints of stuff. And that's why I discovered so many other like past comics from 60s and 70s and 40s and 30s. And so finding that stuff is really fun, and just discovering people like Alex Toth and all these guys that I never heard of when I first got into comics, and now I can really appreciate their art and have nice collections of them, instead of tracking down a 4-year-old issue that's going for $50.
Instead of tracking down Amazing Spider-Man 383 or something like that.
And so that way it's there's so much reprints out there. And
well, that's it's funny because I've read like, sometimes I'll read a blog by a realtor, and he's basically saying like, any comic you're coming out with, you're like competing against 40 years of history or like 50 years. Like there's so much out there. And so you've been doing El Circa. Have you been working on anything else, or?
I do a lot of, lately, a lot of watercolor portraits based on like mugshots. Online. Oh, and cool. I really like portraiture. And I did like my senior thesis in art school on it. And so I was like really like painting people.
Well, I mean, I noticed like, I think you've got like a portrait of Dan Olsen over there, and did you do that?
No, I don't know that. It's some random dudes.
Online,
but it kind of looks like me.
Well, it's in front of Dan's cube, so I thought, or Dan's drawing board, so I thought, kind
of shifted over.
But,
I got a mustache on there.
Okay. But
I like doing that stuff, and so I almost started doing them here as kind of like a warm up. And just kind of get the brain going, and they turned out pretty nice. But I always, part of me, people always ask me, you should publish them or do a show with them. But in my mind, they're still kind of just like little practice things. And,
and I mean, it might help to have like a theme or something like,
and they're not always like explicitly like noticeable as mugshots. I do kind of just.
I mean, mugshots, I think would definitely I think there would be some appeal there.
But for on those, I was just basically just trying to just like, work, paint, people's faces. And get some kind of expression there.
Well, and hopefully you'd get some unique faces with mugshots and stuff.
And they're just so perfect for that. And
and it's almost like the character design. You've got the front, you've got the side. And just that is,
so useful because you just for learning how to paint faces and stuff.
I've just been doing it like over the past week. I've been doing it for dogs.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about doing, I did like a throwaway comic, that was just, basically it was called, Fetch Quest, and it was just a dog that was going to be about to go on a fetch quest, essentially. And it was like an anthropomorphic dog. And so like people kind of responded to it and like, this should really be a book. Like, so I've been trying to like hammer out shapes for like what kind of shape like a corgi is. And, like just trying to get the face shapes and stuff like that from different angles and things like that. So I've been sketching dogs lately.
Yeah. Which is so nice now with, Google image searches or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
We were all like young starting out, in high school. It's like you had to like find a magazine or something.
Or go to the encyclopedia or,
no, it's just everything's at your fingertips. And you can
I mean, I'm hoping that with Google's search algorithm that it's varied enough that like, people won't just, do the search for, like hospital bed or something. And then like, oh, your comic looks a lot like the hospital bed in there. And I'm trying to like get some sort of, object sense that, I can maybe rotate things around a bit. And, but, So so you went to art school?
Yeah, I did. I went to the College of Visual Arts in St. Paul. School that's no longer
Oh no!
around.
Is that the one where you could like draw a picture of a turtle and send it in?
No,
okay.
Not as prestigious as that one.
Okay.
And it was in St. Paul on Summit Avenue in a nice old mansion there with some other satellite buildings in that neighborhood. And it was kind of like a competing school to MCAD.
Yeah.
But a lot smaller class size. And I really enjoyed it. A lot of great teachers. And
was this during a time when comics as a coursework was actually possible? Or?
Not yet. It was right before. I think MCAD was offering it.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what got me out of like drawing comics for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, oh, well, that's probably not a very feasible career. And they weren't really supporting it in the school anyway. There were people that drew comics, but there wasn't a lot of focus on that yet. And so I was an illustration major. And so I just kind of focused on that. And which was useful, which I think with comics majors now in schools, I hope they have like an illustration component where like you're probably not going to make a living off doing comics.
No, I understand.
You need to like have an illustration component to your career because
I always feel a little awkward because like I was at a comics meetup with like comic students, and there's like a part of me that's like, man, should I bring up like that this might be a bad idea? I don't want to sound like their parents or something, but
which is an issue because I think people into comics and drawing comics, there's always that they do tend to search for validation.
Yeah.
So when a school is offering, you can major in
comics,
and
you can become accepted and you can get scholarships
but then you're still $100,000 in debt afterwards.
Yeah.
At least. And so without maybe the forethought of, what career options are you going to have?
Yeah.
Other than maybe coming back and being a teacher, teaching that stuff.
Yeah.
You should have
participating in the pyramid scheme.
Yeah. Which I mean, it's I mean, I always thought it'd be fun to be like a figure drawing teacher or something, or a drawing teacher. But I think comics courses should have the component where like even Dan Clowes and Chris Ware and Robert Crumb do illustration gigs because their one book every 5 years isn't going to pay all the bills.
Oh yeah,
so, and they're doing pretty high level illustration stuff. Stuff, but still, it's
Well, I mean, even illustration can be tough from what I've heard. I mean,
and at least they have that reputation that helps them get those gigs.
Yeah,
but, there are plenty of illustrations like comics. People working in comics today that just regular workaday stuff, they still have to also do illustration stuff because that's it'll pay some bills. Or doing your like personal passion project about your childhood, it might sell down the road, but there's
which I mean it's funny to me like I'm repeating from the last podcast, but it's funny how so many people want to make comics. Like to the point where I'm not even sure, like, I know, I think I know why I want to make, why I make comics, but, it's funny to me that other people want to sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, you see, like, students, MCAT kids or whatever, just in their passion for it. And I recognize, my, that in me, when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And maybe just being jaded.
Well, I was more like, I think that age I was more like wanting to be a writer.
Yeah.
But, and I guess I am in a way, I don't know. But, yeah.
And even with like El Circa, what helps me with that is that it is like kind of totally just my I did it just to interest myself.
Yeah.
Like if I found this book on a shelf, if it wasn't by me, I'm like, oh, this is really cool. I want to read this. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to do, is make something that would make me want to pick that book up and just entertain me basically. Mm-hmm. And have, even thinking of like an outside audience really isn't that much of a issue for me. I just want to make something that I'm proud of, and if other people are, liking it, it's like, well, will blow my mind, but that's not my first priority.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I'm sort of, I've kind of, I think a lot of creative people, like, that's like the Gordian knot about, do you do it for yourself or do you do it for, people? And I sort of squared that by like, or, my justification is I want to communicate stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I mean, and that way you're doing it for yourself still, mm-hmm. but you're also, doing it for other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I do try to, like, I don't know, I do try to improve my writing and, mm-hmm. or improve, I do try to improve and make things though that people, make it hopefully better for people. Mm-hmm. And like I said, like with this dog thing, it's like, yeah, this might actually be kind of fun. Yeah. Maybe I'll try that because I also kind of wanted to get back into storytelling a little bit because, I've been doing a lot of the one panel comics mm-hmm. and I don't know. I think there's a part of me that's missing it a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I can see that. Even like with my painting stuff.
Yeah.
I going through art school and seeing I was an illustration major, but just like seeing from a distance, like the fine arts students and just the hoops you had to jump through and the somersaults you had to do to explain your work and all this stuff. And it just seemed very draining to me. And I mean, it's important to be able to talk about your work and have a structure.
Yeah.
But I just saw a lot of talk that all just sounded the same.
Well, and it seems like you had to talk that way too. You had to talk in a certain way.
Yeah, and I can do that. I can totally BS. And just because that's what you kind of have to learn.
Well, it's weird because this is like something that I run into a lot is that it seems to me, and this is my opinion, I don't know, but coming from the creative writing standpoint, and I'm not like super creative writing guy. I like took a few classes. I had an English minor. But it seems like at some point when you're dealing with language, like you just say what you want to say. Yeah. Whereas it seems like with fine arts, like you try to obfuscate what you say as much as possible. Yeah. Like, you're like, if you actually have a clear meaning behind the artwork, then you're cheating or you're not doing a good job or
or people think it's just illustration. It's like you're supposed to be kind of pulled back and be kind of cool and just distant, and which is true, but also you have to be talk about that work in a language that people in that world will understand. Is okay, this is a serious thing.
This is the juxtaposition of
exactly.
this,
and which depressed me because the art can be so diverse, but to talk about the artwork was
all the same. Yeah.
But I would find artists really like.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my favorite artists like Lucian Freud or Francis Bacon would talk about their work. And the way they talked about it was just as unique as their own work. It wasn't using a bunch of, theory words and things like that.
Yeah.
Their talk about their own, thinking and stuff was as unique as the work itself. So it wasn't, they just had their unique way of thinking about their work and discussing it that wasn't just art theory 101, which I really appreciated, and I think that
I mean, I guess there is a little bit of that in the writing world too, where there's like people are, I mean, they're trying very hard to sort of write about everything in the world in one story kind of thing. Like, like this story is actually about how everything that's going on in the world, like with politics and love and identity and, and it's,
sometimes you gotta focus it. And, and so that's why when even my painting stuff, I kind of let that idea go that I had to necessarily appeal to a certain audience, have them understand my work, where if I feel I can communicate what I want with the artwork itself, and then communicate my own way, the artwork, either, with words or whatever, in discussing it. I'm much more happy with the work when I don't feel I'm pandering or have to shoehorn the meaning into something that's understandable to a certain level of people. And the artists I like do that very same thing. It's like they're on their own track. They don't care about what the audience for it might.
I have a theory that like 8-year-olds might be better at writing comics than adults.
Yeah, true.
Because like 8-year-olds will just like, they'll have a beginning, middle, and end, and just like there's just a short story. There's what's happening on the page is what's happening. Yeah. And with adults, it's like, okay, here's the theme, and I'm going to introduce these characters based on, this is this giant overarching theme about capitalism, and it involves large skeletons, and I don't know.
Yeah, which is nice about like reading older comics and stuff. Yeah, like kind of like fell in love with like the look of like old like Batman comics from the 50s, which were 20 years or 10, 15 years past the time they ran out of stories. Anyway, so just doing all these weird, crazy stuff, and so they're like kind of fun and kind of not taking themselves seriously, which I think contemporary comics and ergo like the movies that are based on those comics, where they try to be so serious, and so it takes the fun out of it, and where those like older stuff from 40 years ago, it's more enjoyable since there isn't this heavy like,
or if there is like it's there's like some kind of giant penguin or something involved too. Like it's like they take it completely seriously, but there's like just ridiculous, let's move the moon out of the way of the sun kind of like. Yeah.
And so like just knowing where like the genre works best is interesting to see, and I'm discovering more of that just in older comics, and so that's why I really don't read much contemporary stuff. I'll track down art by people I like, but like I'll just like track down, like I just like find more obscure comic artists I've never heard of and try to find out
that's a good thing to do. I mean, I think that is definitely a good way to sort of I think that what you process in kind of, and what helps kind of what comes out. So it's I don't know. No, you shouldn't do that. No, I'm just I don't know. So you've kind of said that you would like you basically start off with kind of the format in mind before you have everything else.
Yeah, a little bit. I'll start monkeying around with like just sizes and how like cover might look. And that will give me the format of the pages feel like this.
Do you ever have like the story before the format, or do you have any of these like L circuit planned out? Or
sometimes I'll like get the cover, like kind of idea of the cover and what the cover stock will be, and maybe an image or type and stuff. And then I'll start jotting down ideas, like little plot points here and there. Not even like writing a script or anything. Yeah. And that will kind of suggest images and panels, and then like dialogue. And then I'll start kind of putting them together and arranging them.
So there's like no overarching story where like everybody's gonna.
there is kind of an endpoint I have in mind. How I get there will be the interesting part. So that keeps it loose where I don't have a definite
Yeah, that's a good
number
idea.
of issues. And so how I get there will be, kind of looping around. And I have the freedom where I've done like the A&L Circa books, but then also I've done some smaller like mini comics based on like a backstory of one of the characters.
Okay.
Which is useful since I can just have this little side story and just have it focused on that. Well, it won't be like in the main timeline of the story, but it'll influence like the backstory of one of the main characters.
It definitely feels like a family book. Like it feels like there's sort of all these different little relationships that coincide. And,
it's kind of like people kind of coalesce in this group where it's kind of like finding your own like family of weirdos that you have in place here, for a little while at least. And there's like a home where people like, this is like something they belong. Mm-hmm. And I mean, even the whole idea of El Cerdo came out of I'd be fascinated with like, sideshows and that culture and the visuals of like the big banners you would have. Very garish colors but very graphic like images, not gross, which
they're kind of almost like kind of flat. Like there's not a lot of perspective or anything. Yeah,
but it's very like they're meant to catch your eye. When going through the circus and kind of like, oh, I want to see what that is, which is something like I like to do when I actually make just all the work going into designing the books, the book covers and stuff. Like I would have like the books out on tables at cons and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd see somebody walk by and I'd see their neck crane over looking at the book and they'd come over and pick it up and like that's exactly what.
Yeah. No, I
that work like making the cover, catching.
Yeah. I like that part too. Yeah. Well, it's almost like conventions can almost be like stand-up comedy for cartoonists. Yeah. Like it's the opportunity to see people react to stuff that you've made. Yeah. And then and sometimes, if somebody reacts to something, then you can kind of maybe, I don't know. I don't know if you ever like say, okay, well, they kind of like this. I mean, not something like, oh, we need to have like a guy with a third eye every cover or something, but like something about the lines of like, oh, well, people are really commenting on this and I like this too. And yeah.
And just like trusting your own, judgment on what someone will react to is like, oh, what the hell is this? And just like that question, like, oh, I need to discover what this is. And pick it up. And then usually like my like routine at conventions, and I like showed at Mix, and I did a couple of topics. I think I did like a spring con one year.
Yeah.
But it's like they would come over and pick it up, or come walk over and like, okay, play cool, and then if they pick it up, I kind of go into my spiel, like, oh, this is a story about this, and kind of try to reel them in, and give them kind of like an elevator pitch, and
I usually wait until they're about to leave, but I don't know if that's a good strategy. Sometimes I don't make it enough.
Yeah, it's kind of you do have to kind of play around and see what works. And so it's nice, even though I'm like very like focused on like I'm just making this for myself. Yeah, it's when you see other people like react to it in front of you.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with that either. I mean,
It's good to see that work kind of pay off.
Because I think it can kind of get you down a little bit if like nobody cares like at all. Yeah. Because it gets to the point where it's like, why am I even printing books?
So it keeps you going in some ways. That okay, I have at least an outlet for it, and so the books will be out. And I like making art because I like making objects that will exist in the world. And so places like that, you can like send your
send stuff out in the world.
Yeah, and I know one year I had, I think it was at the first Hot Topic, a guy came and bought the newest El Circo book and said he bought my previous book at Mix, and so he made it a point. He saw me at a topic, so he made it a point to come and buy my stuff.
Yeah,
it made my day. It's like, oh, cool. He was keeping up with it, and it was like, it was, did give me validation, which, I'm not necessarily looking for.
Well, it's I mean, you kind of need it helps to have a little validation.
Yeah. Like which I might be being facetious where, part of me does like, that attention. Well, being a shy kid growing up.
I mean, and I think you brought up Dano. I mean, I don't know, he might be listening to this, so I got to be careful, but, but, I think a lot of it was like he didn't get a lot of validation or, I think that's why he kind of quit, he always seemed to kind of want to be doing his own thing. Yeah. But at the same time, like, I think just the lack of like validation might have made him quit.
Yeah,
quit a little bit.
Everybody has their own level of what they want to get out of it, and if they're not getting that, is to like maybe reassess it.
Yeah, I mean,
just everybody has to kind of make that decision.
I think everybody goes. I mean, I've went through a period like that not too long ago where it was just like, okay, I've either got to do things differently or I'm, or just not do this, like, because it can be a drag. I think people say, like, you know, you gotta love it for making comics, and I think part of the reason they say that is it can be a real drag if you don't like it.
Yeah, and there's a point where even like physically drawing them.
Yeah, where
I was like getting my last El Circuit book together.
Yeah,
excuse me, and I had a bunch of like the penciled pages out, and you're kind of like crossing your fingers, like, okay, is this going to come together in time?
Yeah,
and but then I would like start inking it, and like, okay, this is kind of there, but then what I discovered, at least when I'm doing like my ink washes, is that's where it really kind of comes together. I'm like, okay, it's getting there, and that kind of a relief where what I'm hoping for when that starts coming together. Yeah, that's when I'm like, okay, I've reached that point where I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I think that's because I know what you're talking about, because I'm trying to do work right now that is energizing, like. That, you know, makes me feel good. Like, in some ways, I hope I'm not like chasing the, you know, the snack bar of the, you know, like chasing the sugary, candy bar and not getting real nourishment or whatever. Yeah. But I mean, part of it is, I think for me, the ongoing struggle with making comics and art in general is like, doing it and living, you know, having a job. That, you know, because I don't really plan to do this for a living. Yeah. I mean, if I could, that'd be okay, I guess. But even then, it's like, I don't know if I'd get the insurance and, you know, and I don't know if I'd be happy if I did it for a living.
Well, I mean, I look at it, you know, even if I just have like a regular day job.
Yeah.
I mean, I see so many people they have a job and they go home and they eat and they go to bed and go back to work the next day. Yeah. Where I feel at least fortunate that I have like art I can do, music I can do, or just like this interesting thing to kind of spend your life doing. I mean, if there isn't any like benefit financially or whatever, it's more interesting the alternative of doing nothing.
And I mean, I've done that sort of life of, you know, go home, play video games, sleep. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of not, I don't know. I think I was maybe a little more mentally stable then, but like, I also think I was bored. Yeah.
I mean, even with me, I mean, being a shy kid in school, making art and stuff and drawing was kind of a way to get attention and possibly theoretically make friends.
Yes. And no, I mean, gosh, I've made most of my friends in the last 10 years, like through drawing.
Yeah. And drawing, you know, kind of help with that. Just like having something interesting to kind of engage people with. Like, you're into like drawing that stuff. It's really cool. And you kind of go from there. And so you're like, you'd be like that guy. Like, oh, you're the guy that likes to draw. And which, you know, is better than the alternative of being kind of invisible.
Well, and I've also found that people respond differently to finding out you've made comics than if you collect them. Yeah. I mean, I think, well, on some level, collecting comics is maybe a little bit cooler than it used to be. But I think that,
I don't know.
Especially like, you know, if I were to put on an OkCupid dating site or something that I make comics, that's going to get a lot more attention than if I say that I collect comics, you know, like,
That's true.
Cause then I'm an artist.
Yeah. And that could be a wide variety where if you say you're collecting comics, it's pretty much assumed you're buying.
Yeah, you're probably buying superheroes. Like, the question is, what's your favorite superhero?
Yeah,
then,
But if you're saying you're making comics,
then it's like, what kind of comics do you make?
Like, cool web comic or something. Or whatever. So there's, you know, a bit more of a range there.
Yeah. And, all right. Well, it's getting dark in the studio here a little bit. It does kind of get spooky here at night.
Some weird noises.
I try to get and thankfully it's warm enough. I don't have to keep that window, or it's cool enough. I don't have to open the window like last time and get weird traffic noise or anything. But yeah, I guess we could probably wrap it up here. Do you have a website?
I do. It's danmurphyart.com.
Okay.
And, probably hasn't been updated in a while, but I can see some of my art and contact info on there.
And I have ryandow.com and a bunch of other websites, Enough Fun Comics and or enoughfuncomics.tumblr.com, captainsadnesscomic.tumblr.com. Yeah, I think that's it. And I don't have a website for this yet. I'm just kind of doing them as I can. You know, I was lucky to get 2 in a row, in 2 weeks, but might not be so lucky in the coming weeks. So I'm sorry I don't have any schedule listeners, but this is mostly for fun. So, okay, bye.